This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders. Razzie Erasmus has always been a man who loves to prove a point. You'd think taking the worst Springbok team ever to double world champions would be enough for most people to go, you know what, I've done well. I've done all right. But from the moment Ireland rocked up in Pretoria, the Boks intent was clear. Razzie's intent was clear. A stadium bouncing, a team rippling, an anthem before maybe the best it's ever been. Ireland have spent the last few years yo-yoing between world number 1 and world number 2, and the Springboks wanted to prove to Ireland, to the world, to their fans, and perhaps most importantly, to themselves, that the gap between Ian and Twer is growing. A World Cup's not enough. Domination is what counts. Saturday was Test Rugby played to its top intensity, the sort of game where every drop ball was forced, every error caused by intelligent defence or incredible physicality, the kind of game that proves its point even without a scoreboard, as the Boks broadly blew Ireland away, and yet add in that scoreboard and Team Green actually in green showed just why they are who they are, a clinical display keeping Ireland in the game right to the death. So let's get into it. How did the Boks cement their status as world number 1? How can Ireland shore up for that second test? And just where was this game won? Perhaps the biggest point proven by Razzie Erasmus this year came off the field, as exhausted by boring old Bok complaints, he poached one of World Rugby's most exciting and innovative attack coaches, former Japan and Highlanders guru Tony Brown. Faced with a team lacking in power but high on dynamism, looking to take on big dogs Ireland and Scotland, in 2019, Brown pioneered a new attacking structure known as the 1-3-2-2 with Japan, designed to get the most out of a smaller pack. If you've watched the channel before, you probably heard this to death. The idea was to get your best carries into wider positions, the likes of Leach and Hermano using their pace out wide, carrying on the wing instead of carrying in tight, going into backs, having more space and more time to make their carries. It was a revolution. Japan had invented a whole new means of generating fast front foot ball, and Ireland and Scotland each had no idea what to do about it, losing those games largely thanks to the revolution in carrying Tony Brown had designed. Within a year, Wales, Australia, and indeed Ireland and Scotland had all stolen the 1-3-2-2, the structure built by Japan. Within 2 years, virtually every test team in the world was playing some variation on Tony Brown's tactics. As such, the Boks were not poaching Brown in order to take over, get him to implement that game plan in the way England have with Felix Jones. Brown, instead, with the Boks, has a very different prospect on the table. He's now working not with the Japanese pack, who lacked power but had dynamism, but instead the biggest, or at least the angriest, forward pack in World Rugby. And so instead of translating across the ideas designed for Japan, Brown has come up with a whole new bespoke structure just for the Boks. And now, after 2 games, the shape Brown is pioneering is starting to emerge. The basic structure is a bit like this. It's a middle 2-2-2 shape with either an extra 2 out wide or 2 1s on either extreme. Most often on Saturday it was a 2-2-2-2. Essentially, this just means every forward is paired with another, generally from the same position. 2 front rowers together, 1 lock with a flanker and the other one with the remaining prop or hooker. And then out wide, dual edge forwards, 2 back rowers. On Saturday, we saw playing these roles Peter Sefatoy and Sia Kolisi. And this is where the real genius components begin. Where going wide for Japan was a necessity, the Boks have more than enough carries capable of making the game line with ease, and as such, they use them. They always have. Mbonambi, Smith, Etzebeth and Shea, Moster in tight areas are brilliant. As such, this has remained pretty much exactly as was. Those players carry in tight into the areas most congested with the defence. The entire pack, bar maybe Matt Herbert, sorry, France, are world-class game line carriers, and it's allowed the Springboks to constantly move forward previously, eventually opening up room for the backs, who pretty much kept out of things in the rough and rumble until their time was there to shine. This is where Tony Brown comes in and it all starts to change. The old formula the Boks generally used, Sia Kolisi and Peter Sefatoy, the two best ruck boys in the team, amongst these middle groups to clear out, making them groups of 3 rather than groups of 2, smashing in and securing the ball. Brown, however, had different ideas. On Saturday, the Springboks generally targeted, looked for one-man clearouts. The forward paired with each carrier would smash in over the top, relying on how fast to the breakdown Faf de Klerk can be to get the ball away, being hopefully quicker than the opposition can get any jackal threats in. Offloads off the deck, France style, started to become fairly frequent, keeping pace and continuity up enormously. Check here how the Boks rely on Aronsa alone, probably the smallest player in the team, to clear out Creel despite the presence of world-class open side Josh van der Fleer. If they're fast enough to get there, if they play with enough pace, even the smallest player on their own will do, especially the ball presentation is as good as it was for the Boks on Saturday. This allows the Springboks to play much faster, up the pace, up the tempo, but on top of that, it also frees up du Toit and Khaleesi to play a completely different role because they're not focused on securing possession. Just as Japan looked to use their best carries in wide channels, South Africa have plonked their quickest, most dynamic forwards out wide, where before that pace was used to make them work hard, instead now it's being used as pace. When carrying into heavy traffic, Peter Steph du Toit's lanky frame in past has just become a bigger target for the tackler, but in wide channels, with head of speed against mostly backs, he's an utter menace, it turns out, like taking down a giraffe with a toothpick, often requiring double tackles from multiple backs, freeing an arm nonetheless to offload over the top of any nearby heads. And likewise, Khaleesi was free to be the roaming, attacking, dynamic carrier he was in his younger days, not confined to the ruck. Just check the stats to see what a difference putting these two players in the wide channels has made. Khaleesi, right, made 6 carries on Saturday in just 49 minutes on the pitch. Over the full World Cup, in the 6 games he played, he made 8 carries. Not only that, but the yardage on his average carry went up by 2 meters just for being in those wide channels. He averaged 1 defender beaten every 2 games last year, yet beat 3 on Saturday alone in 59 minutes. Brown has found a role that gets Khaleesi playing rugby that pumps up not just his team, but the crowd. Exciting, dynamic, powerful as all hell, able to put in shots like this on Robbie Henshaw. Something we haven't been seeing from him because he's been asked to play a far more conservative team-first role rather than getting the most out of him as an individual. And it's really exciting to see, and yet it's nothing compared to what they've done with Peter Steph du Toit. In 2023, Peter Steph du Toit averaged 3.4 carries for 18.8 meters per match for the Springboks. On Saturday, he made 7 carries for 44 meters, both stats more than doubled thanks to his new positioning, whilst making more offloads in one game than he did in the entire World Cup put together. All of this without compromising his work on the other side of the ball, actually upping his average tackle count from 14 to 20. By changing how the Boks approach the breakdown on their own ball, by changing the way it looked to be a more France-style system than the traditional security-first Razzie Erasmus style of play, they've proven a point in bringing their best forwards into the game and essentially creating 2 extra bodies in attack just through being quicker and quicker as they're going. This, however, isn't a forwards-only gig, as each pair is joined by a specific back to complement them. Typically, the first group, the most direct carriers here, the prop and the hooker likely, is Pollard behind them, the Boks' primary distributor. The next 2 group is usually paired with Willy Leroux, one of the best passers of the ball and organisers of attack in the game, with either Diolande or Creel joining the third. Often, instead of floating behind, they'll join in, become lateral, become an extra running option alongside them. This allows for an additional clean-out option if necessary, but also creates so much room for creativity and how they work between the groups. Look at the way Willy Leroux here, for instance, holds the ball up, allowing du Toit and Khaleesi to select different lines around the defender. 1 unders, 1 overs, the fullback just being able to wait for the picture to complete so he can put one of them into space. It's a strategy actually inspired in true Razzie Erasmus style by a moment from a training session when the Springboks pack attempted to build a website. Confused by HTML codes for colours, the whole lot, how do you even insert an audio file? It was the backs who stepped in their pairs and suggested they go instead to Squarespace. As Willy Leroux sat down with Bongi and Ox, he was able to show them Squarespace is so fast and easy to use, just selecting what they want to go in. Ox wanted to add a shop. He wanted to add a section to buy cake. So Willy Leroux went, well, just click a few buttons and you've got a shop set up in mere minutes. No faff or indeed Grant Williams required. In no time at all, Ox had his own cake site for lots of cakes, and Bongi and Banambi had his own website full of bongis. And you too could have your own website if you had a link in the description and use the offer code SQUIDGRUGBY to save yourself some rand, euros, pounds, dollars, whatever you want to choose. You could bloody save Swedish krona if you want to. Save any currency you like on a brand new shiny website. Bloody Squarespace. It's great. This new structure, however, is still far from perfect. It's not quite working flawlessly yet. One-man clearouts are something most teams have avoided apart from France because they carry a heavy risk, and South Africa did pay the price quite a few times. Caelan Doris repeatedly turning them over, here brilliantly identifying a ruck with little support, seeing Ox's off his feet and able to sneak in over the ball. The number of turnovers the Boks were giving away went up drastically just for taking these risks on the turnover, and yet it did create so much more attack and chance and dynamism. This will likely get better as the game goes on. It's currently a risk-reward situation. Yet, as they get more and more used to playing this game, the rewards will slowly overtake the risks. The Boks are just 2 matches into a brand new system, and these things will tighten up. However, we did see signs of how they're combating that without making the attack ineffective in the lead up to the opening try, finished with a beautiful step by Curtly Aronson. This is a good kick by blonde lump of cocaine Craig Casey, and Nash sets off in chase, but Khaleesi, Creel and Aronson plus de Klerk form a brilliant escort here, grouped so tightly he has no way through, allowing LaRue a clean catch. That trio clean, and Khaleesi subsequently stays on this wing, the Boks settling into the 1-2-2-2-1 rather than their 2-2-2-2, just meaning that Khaleesi and Utoy split off as an edge forward each. They're on either wing instead of together on one instead of doubling up. Faf fires a mispass and Malherbe carries. However, McCarthy makes a brilliant mess of this ruck, and it prompts Shea to step in, breaking from his group to secure the ball. Now, this is a baked-in failsafe. All forwards are at any point seemingly free to leave their group, come in and help secure the ball, help be a second or even third clean-out option if needed. But there is currently a bit of a cost to this, in that Umbanambi is left in no man's land. He is not an active part of this attack. He's offering no threat whatsoever, which, considering rugby, especially in attack, is a numbers game, it's not ideal. The Boks do, however, work past it. Quagga and Etzebeth form the next group, but Faf goes behind directly to Pollard, spinning it wide to edge forward Dutoy, who eats up the ground massively, having got outside Island so quickly thanks to how drawn in they are by these forwards, before offloading inside to Diolande. With Burn here eyeing a turnover, Smith shoots in from his group to clear out once again, leaving Etzebeth as a nothing option attack. He's not offering any threat here, which again would be a problem were it not for the fact that the other 14 Boks are being utilised beautifully. 2 forward groups here line up by each other again, the first playing out the back to Pollard whilst the props run simple blocking lines. No interest in the ball whatsoever, just in obstructing Island. Van der Vliet does exceptionally well here to avoid Malherbe, but LaRue's body language is brilliant. The way he just turns himself away as he passes to Law VDF in and gives Creel the ball to run onto, and from there Creel plays it perfectly. Caitlin Doris here, who had a brilliant game, is running as the catch-up defender, trying to cover out the wing, trying to hair it out just in case the ball gets that far beyond him. However, Oxon Shea just steps into his way to slow him down. Have you heard the values of carrot cake? Giving Creel time to advance until Nash is fixated on him, too far away to reach Khaleesi. He then plants his feet in front of Doris, blocking the number 8 once again from drifting out and leaving it as a 2-on-1. Khaleesi frees Aronson, whose pace gets him on the outside, the readjusting Nash and Doris, who've been blocked momentarily, drawn in, before making a brilliant step on Osborne to go over and score a beautifully worked and even better finished try. It's a score the Boks wouldn't have created a year ago, a product of these new systems, allowing them to get players previously, we now realise in hindsight, kind of underutilised into those wide channels that best use their skill set, and upping the pace from their old school style of rugby into something new and exciting and vibrant. If ripping open the defence of the second best team in the world in the second minute is what this team can do in their second game, where it's being trialled, imagine what the possibilities are in a few years' time once the one-man cleanouts get cleaner, once the team gets more used to the systems they're running. Ireland, on the other hand, were less looking forwards and more looking side to side, unsure quite what was going on. This was maybe the most comfortably second best Ireland have been since their opener in New Zealand 2 whole years ago. Very little clicking, and yet there was scarcely a moment where they didn't feel in the game, even if they weren't on top. If the old adage that you learn more from your losses than your wins is true, Saturday gave us a pretty clear picture of who Ireland are, and the answer is a side made for Test rugby, almost custom built. Something perhaps best summed up by the performance of Jack Crowley, the fly half, and how the team clicked together for the first try scored by debutant Jamie Osborne. Crowley's first half was full of errors, brain farts, misses, and yet never once did his composure drop, decisions change, or head look remotely close to going. That's enormously to his credit. The entire lead up to Osborne's try, Crowley is there, communicating, calling, yet taking nothing on himself. The usual trap that a young fly half who just made a few errors might fall into would be either backing out and quieting down and falling out the game, or trying to do too much themselves, calling everything on themselves. But Crowley's patience and level-headed nature remains as though they were 50 points up and he'd never made an error. The moment he does touch it, it's quick hands and then he reloads instantly. Furlong carries, and the phase after, Crowley sees the Boks shut down his options. The concussed and should not be on the field, Henshaw running quite a poor line, not giving him a second option, so he takes it himself. A pragmatic, sensible decision. Casey plays a couple of decisions open side, and now, back on his feet, Crowley works around to that blind side. Faf spots him and calls for teammates to join him on this side, expecting a big play from the fly half. Dutoy here wrapping around. However, this changes the picture, and both Crowley and Creel spot it at the exact same moment as Crowley starts peeling across, making a a call. Dorries makes a brilliant carry, not because of the yardage he makes, but because of how many tackles he engages. Etzebeth and Muster are both committed on the floor. The entire front row also considered becoming a third there. Dorries' ball presentation is superb, the ball remains fast, and Henshaw and Van der Fleer do that thing that Ireland do brilliantly, each one pinning one of the locks on the floor. Their clean-out isn't about the ball at all, it's not about securing it, it's about taking Boks players out the game, and meaning, on this next phase, the only forwards on this side of the pitch are the front row. Crowley is wrapped fully around. With just props in front of him, there's no pressure, no line speeds. It's the slowest players on the field marking him, so he holds the ball that extra second to draw Creel in. Colby, in turn, bites, watching these two runners on a short ball, something Ireland love to throw, but Crowley instead goes over the top with a mad, ambitious ball. Confidence not affected one bit. Sheehan takes it and fixes LaRue in the only tackle he made all game, as a former fullback living the dream, with Lowe making a brilliant call, taking it on the wing, and somehow riding Colby's tackle. A great support line from Osborne, allowing him to recover the miracle offload and score his first test try. The thing is, of all the things in rugby, the one that Ireland are best at is scoring points. They were outplayed in almost every area of the field for me on Saturday, and yet similar to their loss at Twickenham, they're so good at making opportunities show on the scoreboard, it didn't really matter. There were so many moments in the game where you'd glance down thinking the Springboks are out of sight and see actually the margin was within a try. It's the brilliance of being so system-led and having so much trust in that system. Where other sides may start to chase the game or if fly halves start panicking, Ireland didn't change their game plan one iota, didn't change their approach, their mentality at all. It's massively to their credit. They're trusting the process, repeatedly getting them back into position to score points, and eventually producing this gorgeous try from box kick sloth Conor Murray. It's a brilliant variation on a move that created the try for Hugo Keenan against France last year. Dorries smashes it up here on first phase, off the dropout, and look at how Ryan and Van der Fleer affect this ruck. It's the hardest anyone in rugby has grappled a cock since Rugby Australia took on Israel Folau. Pinned in, Steinkamp is forced to fill in two separate roles, initially targeting Murray, pressuring the fringes, before drifting off. With no fullback hitting a line, the Boks look up, and they're not seeing anything over the forward pod here. They're not seeing an obvious trick play, just some lads coming to crash it up. But instead, right as Beelum reaches contact, Healy targets Steinkamp here, and the prop hits it behind to Kelleher, running slightly behind the others to slide right through. Gorgeous move, clearly designed for Dan Sheehan. He's not on the pitch. Ronan Kelleher does a brilliant job anyway. Murray, like every good scrum half ever, any scrum half who's never in this line is shit, has got ahead of the play and takes the pass to go under the posts. Ireland continued to be themselves until the death. The Bear tried tribute to system rugby against the odds. However, whilst the attitude is spot on, encouraging, mature as hell, perhaps there is a concern in how unwilling they were to adjust the smaller aspects of their play, as the Boks gave us a masterclass in making that game plan as ineffective as possible, leaving Ireland with really just 3 passages of functional working ball to play off, 2 of them resulting in a try. There's a growing pattern with Andy Farrell's Ireland. They like to have the ball, that much is fairly obvious, and they like to weigh you down, tackle after tackle, phase after phase, shape after shape, decision after decision. In every game Ireland have won over the last 18 months, bar 2, the narrow, tight victories over South Africa and Samoa, the Green Gang have played 90 plus phases. They've gone through 90 plus rucks in possession. In the games where Ireland have lost over the last 18 months, bar 1, the epic loss to New Zealand in the World Cup, Ireland have gone through fewer than 90 phases over the full match. There's a correlation-causation debate to be had, but the fewer phases you can keep Ireland to, the chances of you winning the game do seem to increase dramatically. To my mind, there's basically 2 ways of doing this, right? Number 1 is dominate possession. Hold on to it yourself. The Boks kicked the ball just 20 times on Saturday. They've only been below that number twice in the last 5 years under Erasmus, the rout of Tonga in the World Cup, and their biggest loss of the year against the All Blacks. Instead, bolstered by Brown, they played a much more possession-focused style of rugby, keeping the ball themselves to keep Ireland's phase count down, all whilst mastering number 2. Try and force Ireland to kick the ball themselves more often. Give the ball to you. The most obvious way to do this is to pin them in their own half, something the Boks did a pretty good job of. But where they really excelled, however, was in making Ireland's ball pretty much unplayable, so they'd have to kick it away. This is one such example. The sort of ball Ireland would normally love to play off, but the Boks just shove big men into it. No interest in turning the ball over, just disrupting, resulting in slow ball to play off on the back foot, and Crowley kicks away after just 2 phases. However, this passage in the 22 is probably the best example of the game. Every single ruck bar 1, the Boks throw a body in. On the majority of phases, they're not looking to turn that ball ball over. No pilfer on the cards, just taking the space. Farrell's attack is built on two things, right? Work rate and quick ball. And they took both of them away. Doris is in some space here, and we're very used to seeing Ireland score next phase off carries like this, but watch Diolande 2 phases in a row just lumping his body in, forcing an extra Irish player to commit, and making a mess of that ball. Phase after phase, after phase after phase, the Irish attack is built off work rate and quick ball, but here the ball takes 6 seconds to come out, and at one point, all 8 forwards are off their feet, committed to the rucks within a 3-metre area, with just 3 Boks counterparts out of the game. This takes all the options out of their attack. Marks is in a good position here, but the Irish have become so firmly disrupted by the havoc the Boks are playing at the breakdown that, in response, 4 players clear out just 1 Springbok. Normally, this would be the closest player their's job, but all of them are close at this point, so all of them take that on themselves rather than being the most efficient they can be, normally something they're so good at. This takes all options out of the Irish attack. It's pretty obvious the ball can only go to Archie or Crowley here, and once one is stopped, Aaron Tate is free to fire in up on the other one. The Irish attack in freefall, Murray taking an ambitious option that isn't on and ending the attack. Frankly, South Africa gave us a masterclass in how to beat Ireland, and it's a game plan everyone would be replicating if only they were capable, if they had the raw physicality, fitness, and players to do so. Rassie Erasmus is a man who loves to prove a point, and on Saturday he showed us he's not only uniquely brilliant at devising strategy, but also building one around his team and the players he has on his side, but perhaps most importantly, at getting his side emotionally right. This was a Boks team that, even without this, on the basis of everything we saw pre-match, probably was never going to lose. They were pumped, bouncing, rippling, ready to belt out that anthem and knock out any Irishman who even looks at them. The two teams play a second test this weekend. One, perhaps, somehow, even more exciting than the first. An opportunity for Ireland to get revenge, to show who they are, to promise they were always worthy of that first place yo-yo. But also, a chance for Rassie to sign off on his point, proving, once and for all, just what a side his Springboks are. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There's another one on England versus New Zealand that went up very recently. We've also started a second channel, more Squid Rugby, where we're looking at perhaps other games and smaller games and other games that we didn't get to. So we looked at Scotland versus Canada.
We did, and we got some really hot takes on Canada and Scotland, and they're so hot. So if you want all of the hottest, warmest takes.
I think the Scotland might be better than Canada.
You reckon? That is such a hot take. If you want more of that, go to more Squid Rugby or at Squid Rugby 2 if you want to use it on the search bar thing.
There's the bloody All Blacks England. We did a look at Scott Robertson before that, and there'll be more next week when they do this all again. They're going to do they're going to play the rugby again this weekend.
Mad.
Do you hear about that?
The same teams again.
They're going to play rugby again this weekend, and then probably every weekend seemingly for the end till the end of time.
Imagine
we're
if
not
the games
going
are
mad.
exactly the same as they were last week.
We'll see. Could be. Might feel that way. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon for Rugby.
Rugby!
There's Bucky's Buerta. Looks on.